So as our coaching carousel starts to spin, Raider Nation, we're in for another entertaining yet stressful offseason. Mendoza, will he be our number one draft pick? What do you think? These are the next topics for Raider Nation's Weekly Wire. Let's go.
Raider, let's go, Raider, let's go, Raider, let's go, Raider, let's go. If you want that life, if you want that action, if you want that life, if you want that action, Raider, let's go, Raider, let's go.
Get on the Raider Nation. Welcome to another episode of the Raider Nation's Weekly Wire. We're here again together, my brother Chris from Protect the Shield podcast, and myself bringing you the latest news, which is very minimal at this point of our season, even though the 2025 season isn't over. But, you know, we do have a little bit to talk about. And, we just want to put it out there for you in the simplest way possible, because we know that there's been a lot of talk of the coaching carousel, who's going to be the next coaching leader for our organization, and also Mendoza. Mendoza's been the hot talk, our already, I guess, confirmed number one draft pick. So we're going to talk about that today. Chris, welcome, brother. Thanks for being here with us, man. How's everything with you?
Everything's good, man. Everything's good. Definitely enjoy, talking ball with you. Had fun last week, kind of breaking Mendoza down a little bit, and he actually balled out, in that game. So, but we'll talk about it though. But yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. How are you?
Good, man. Good. Just, excited to hear your thoughts. I've been obviously watching the War Room and seeing what you guys have been talking about. And, it's been basically the same thing. And hearing the different points of view, kind of makes my wheels start turning and questioning and trying to figure out, what, at least in my mind, is the best situation for our organization. So let's just get started. Let's jump into this. So the hot topic right now, obviously, one of two, is the coaching carousel. Harbaugh, everybody, as soon as he left the Ravens, everybody's like, oh, Harbaugh needs to come to the Raiders. And, I'm not going to lie. It seemed I was intrigued, as I was a few years back with his brother. But at the same time, I wasn't too comfortable him coming into our situation, because it seemed like we were going to do a Pete Carroll part 2, because we're talking about high pedigree coach, with winning record, and having his way of running a team. So I thought, okay, we're just going to jump into the same situation, same scenario, so I was like, let's pass. And luckily, well, at least not luckily, but the Giants got him. Yeah. So, he's out of the picture. But I've been also keeping track on who the Raiders have been interviewing and have been requesting interviews. And here's where I would want your feedback, Chris, because a lot of these coaches, some of them I've heard of, some of them I haven't. I have a list here that I got online of the coaches that are requested to be interviewed or have been interviewed, and that's Vance Joseph, Clint Kubiak, Davis Webb, Matt Nagy, Kevin Stefanski, and there's a bunch more. I don't want to go through the whole list, but one that I've been hearing a lot of positives about, is Davis Webb, Broncos QB coach. So, Chris, tell us your thoughts or what you know about Davis Webb.
Yeah, so Davis Webb, he's actually an interesting prospect. A lot of things that I've heard about him is he's almost like kind of like a young offensive whiz kid. One of my good friends that's a diehard Broncos fan, one thing that he said was, whether Sean Payton or everybody in the building, they think very highly of this kid. He actually had the opportunity to call some plays during preseason this year actually, and he did so well that they really think very highly of him, to the point where there's a lot of rumors kind of saying that if Vance Joseph gets a head coaching position somewhere, he's going to bring on him as the offensive coordinator. So I was actually a little bit surprised to hear that he's getting head coaching interviews this early. But again, I think a lot of people kind of see him as like an up and coming guy, the next kind of Sean McVay type of mind when it comes to the offensive schemes and play calling. And honestly, even when you see the Broncos play, it's a lot of Sean Payton in there, of course, but you can see that he's also innovative, made his scheme a little bit more innovative. And I'm sure Davis has a lot to do with that. So he's definitely an interesting prospect. But to be honest, I think he's going to be more looked at as an offensive coordinator first before he gets a head coaching job. I could always be wrong, but if I had to bet, that's what I would say.
Yeah, because that seems like a pretty steep jump, right?
It's a big jump. Yeah,
from a coordinator to a head coach, especially quarterbacks coach. That kind of reminds me of AP.
Yeah,
what was he? A linebackers coach, right?
Yeah,
and then linebackers coach to interim, which is still, I guess, a little test phase before actually being a head coach. But going from QB coach to head coach does seem very, very worrisome to me.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And then another aspect of that, again, hearing the high praise, but then also being able to jump that high. Obviously it's I don't think it's a good idea, but let's say he does go for the offensive coordinator position. Aren't those the positions that head coaches should be hiring or should be picking?
No, you're right. But I think we're actually interviewing him for the head coaching position, which is even crazier. Yeah, so
right.
That's what I'm saying. So it's crazy. people that have not even been a coordinator before jumping straight up to a head coach position is wild. So, but a lot of times, we can't get too distracted off of like who's getting interviewed. Because a lot of times, I know Al Davis used to do it all the time. He would just interview guys just to get intel, just to get intel on the division, other guys within the division. So, yeah, so maybe that's why we're interviewing a Vance Joseph, who's been over there, just kind of tapping into how they think and things like that. So it could be a lot of that, but also I have heard a lot of things that he is a smart guy that was going to at one point be a head coach, but it's just right now he's just so green, just like you said, AP. I mean that's a big jump from a position coach to a head coach, and even when AP did it, think about all the mentors he had to go out and get. He had to go get the Marvin Lewises and the Tom Coughlins, and even then it almost at times it seemed like it was too much for AP, so to me that's a big jump, but there's some people in Raider Nation that are excited about him potentially being a head coach candidate.
Right. So out of everybody that they've interviewed or are going to interview, is there anybody that stands out to you that you would say, this is a viable candidate for our team?
See, me personally, man, like I'm, of course I did want Harbaugh, because again, I'm all about, like, at this point, the leadership, building this foundation of guys that want to win, that can win, believe in themselves, a true leader. That's what I'm looking for. But according to kind of like where we're going with some of these interviews, I think we're going to go offensive minded. A lot of people want Clint Kubiak. He doesn't inspire me too much, man. I think he's a good offensive mind, but he's not a guy that I just get super excited about. Salute to my boy Severe. He's kind of talked me into leaning towards the Mike LaFleur. Right. Just he's a guy that definitely I'm interested in if we did go that route with the offensive guy. So I would say him. If that's the route we're going to go from an offensive perspective, that's how I want to go. Yeah, but if it's up to me, my guy would probably be Flores or even Robert Saleh. Just a true leader, because at the end of the day, I'm worried for, a young a young rookie head coach going against arguably, the best group of head coaches in our division. So it's going to be tough.
Well, actually, in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But definitely the hard, I think we have the toughest division when it comes to coaches for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, Andy Reid, to me, the best coach in the NFL. And then you got... you got Jim and you got Sean Payton, guys that's, coached a lot of ball, and it's going to be hard to out-coach them. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and based on what you were mentioning about Kubiak and LaFleur, these are both what are the offensive coordinators, right?
Yeah.
Offensive coordinators of teams that are in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they must be doing something right
Yeah.
in order it to be looked at for our head coaching position. I'm just gonna throw a wild guess here, but I feel you're more of a defensive-minded individual when it comes to coaching, right?
Not all the time, though. You know,
No?
not all the time. I mean, I like a leader, man. You know, I like a leader because, you know, there are times where, like, for instance, I wanted to give Josh McDaniels a chance because, you know, he was that offensive-minded guy, you know, not known for being very likable, but as far as X's and O's, and the guy's proving it now, like,
Right.
you know, with Drake May, like, just because you're a good coordinator doesn't mean you could be a good head coach. You got to have that leadership, and I think that's kind of what I'm scared of. You know, just trying to get a young offensive mind. You know, we've seen that before, where, you know, for every Sean McVay, you know, there's a Adam Gase, or there's other coaches that I can mention that just it's too big for them. You know, you got to be able to lead men, and I don't know, man. Like, Kubiak doesn't do it for me, but again, if we get him, support him, and I hope, you know, he's going to be awesome. You know, he comes from a family his dad was a very well respected coach, so we'll see.
Yeah, my concern with picking our next coach is just the unknown, because we've experienced the I guess experienced coaches, the ones with tenure, the ones with pedigree. We've experienced the rookie coaches that, you know, are just trying to prove themselves, and we've missed with both.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there's no, I guess, no direct path for me to say, yes, we need to go young or we need to go experienced, because either way
we failed on both.
Exactly, we have. So it's like I'm really, really confused in that aspect of picking our next coach, because, you know, my feeling is, I don't know what the organization is going to do, but my feeling is that it's a complete rebuild. We need to take our time, make the right choice, and let it develop over the years. You know, and that's it, because the Band-Aids aren't working. You know, the flashes aren't working, and I think we need to make that right decision. And going off topic a little bit, I guess it is part of the topic, but a little bit off, the leadership that's picking the next head coach, which is John Spytek and Tom Brady. You know, Tom Brady, yes, you know, some agree he's the GOAT because of everything that he did with the Patriots. Right. But that doesn't mean that that's going to translate to picking our next head coach.
Absolutely.
You know, and then it seems like he's half-assing the job. Absolutely. You know, because he's more worried, or, you know, too busy on his other businesses that he's running and being a commentator, than really making sure that the Raiders are making the right choice, at least from what we see. Who knows what happens, you know, in the offices and, you know, their meetings or whatever. But from what we can see, it seems like he's just kind of like, whatever, you know, let's pick this guy, you know, I like him, or that's what it looks like. What do you think, Chris? You know, do you think, you know, we have a good situation now that, you know, Spytek and Brady are going to be making these decisions for us?
Yeah, man. So, you know, a lot of people know I'm a diehard Michigan fan, so I do like Tom Brady, of course. You know, even when he went to the pros, when he wasn't playing against us, I would root for him. You know, Michigan guy. But, you know, just because you can throw that ball, just because you can spin that ball, doesn't mean you know how to, you know, build a team. Not saying that, you know, he can't, because he was a good quarterback, but, you know, like you said, you know, when you think about some of the other greats, the ex-players that went on and were able to build teams, you know, Ozzie Newsome, or, you know, I think, you know, my guy at the 49ers, I forgot his name, the president there.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, the guy that played for the Buccaneers, I can't think off the top of my head. Yeah. But anyway, it's like, you know, guys like that, you know, they've shown some success on, you know, knowing how to, you know, get the right pieces in place, you know, the right coaches or whatever, and develop players. But the thing is, those guys seem to be full-time fully invested in what they were doing. And again, you're right. We don't know what Tom's doing, behind the scenes. He might be there all the time, but what we've been hearing, at least what I've been hearing, Tom's not always in the building. For one, he has, another job that he has to do. But again, we don't know how much time he's really spending. And, the Raider Nation, we deserve someone that's going to be full time, putting in overtime, trying to get this thing fixed. And again, I know Brady, the thing is, it's really supposed to be spy tech. So honestly, when I start hearing all this stuff about Brady, putting his hand in the cookie jar and all this, it's like, Brady, I love you for everything you've done. You're a baller, but, let Spy Tech do his thing. And we got to let him, make these decisions, because at the end of the day, Brady, you're a rookie as well at this. Right. This is your first time as well. So I don't know, man. And again, that's why I'm so big on, I don't want everyone in the room to be a rookie. Everyone in our organization being a rookie. So talking about having a rookie head coach who's never been a head coach before. Tom Brady's a rookie at what he's doing. Spy Tech's a rookie at what he's doing. So it's a lot of guys that are just trying to learn on the fly. And that's why, I prefer a coach that's been there, has done that, who at least knows what it looks like, the right way. So, again, there's no right or wrong way, because organizations have went, a lot of different and diverse paths to get to success. But I don't know. I'm nervous. I can't lie. I'm nervous.
Yeah, and they don't leave a lot of comforting feelings to the Raider Nation by putting us in situations like this.
Yeah.
Because if I have no problems with Tom Brady being an owner, business is business.
Yeah.
I have no problems with him, collaborating with Spy Tech, but him being a 50-50 decision maker.
Yeah.
Doesn't give me that confidence.
Yeah.
Because it's either telling me one of two things. Number one, they don't have the confidence in Spy Tech to do his job. And number two, he feels that this job as a general manager is something that he could do part-time and he'll still succeed. So, he's taking it with a grain of salt. It's kind of like, whatever, it's no big deal. Meaning that he's not really caring for the outcome, because he's still going to make his money. The stadium still sells out. So as an owner, they're making their money, but us as fans, we're the ones that are suffering, because we have to watch this team. We have to go to these games and see the lack of participation, the lack of fans in the stadium. And that just doesn't sit well with me. And it just makes me feel uncomfortable to where all these coaching decisions have me a little weary. And then, who knows what they're going to do with the draft as well. So, at least with Al Davis, we knew that
he was all in. He was all in.
It was all about the team, and that's it.
Yeah, it may be the wrong decision, but he's going 1,000 miles per hour with it, and he's putting everything that he has in it. He didn't half-ass nothing. So
exactly, and and that's where I'm concerned, and and again, when it comes to the coaching, I'm definitely going to look more into the individuals that you mentioned. I'm also, looking at everybody else, hearing the news of who they interviewed and what potential reasons are behind these interviews.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. Let's what do they say? Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Prepare for the worst. Yeah. And the thing is, when we speak about this, we're going on a lot of speculation, stuff that we're hearing, rumors, reports, things like that. None of us know for sure. Maybe Brady is putting, a lot of overtime in, studying and doing things behind the scenes, or maybe he is maybe he is hands off and he is letting Spy Tech do his thing and he's not as hands on as people try to make it seem. I'm not sure. We're just going by the reports, but to me, it's you be all in or all out, man. That's, if you just want to be a part owner, and collect some, residual income, that's fine. But let the guys who's going to be fully invested in it make those decisions. I mean, that's just how I feel.
Because, the thing about Tom Brady for me that I think the Raider organization needs to utilize him for is for marketing.
Yeah.
You know, he is the biggest marketing tool that the Raider organization can and has right now at their beck and call. That's what they should use him for.
Yeah.
You know, take his advice, take his point of view.
Yeah.
Have Spy Tech do his job and make the decisions. If he needs advice, hey, go for it. But other than that, no. But okay, so let's see what comes out of these coaching interviews. You know, we still have some time because they can't actually do the hiring until after the season's over, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, for the coaches that are still coaching, yeah. But I think anyone that, you know, anyone else that's available, their season's over, they can hire them, from my understanding.
Oh, okay. So, you know, I guess we can get the news any day now, or get the news in a month's time.
Right.
You know, so we'll see. So now let's move on to the next one of our big topics in the nation is Fernando Mendoza, our number 1 draft pick again. We spoke a little bit about him last week. You know, he is definitely, you know, he has a lot of traits that teams are looking for. You know, Heisman Trophy winner. You know, he has a presence. You know, he's a leader. You know, he's an all around good or great college quarterback. But how does that translate to drafting him for our team, Chris? Do you think, again, you know, I know you had some words to say last week, but then he played the game against Oregon, and, you know, they won. He scored, you said, what, 5 touchdowns or so?
5 touchdowns, yeah. I think 177 yards, yep.
Yeah, but his yards weren't very impressive, and it seems that that's been the MO in his college career. What are your thoughts now as Mendoza being our number 1 overall draft pick?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, especially, you know, since we spoke last time, you know, there's been some changes now that, you know, Dante Moore,
he's gone.
He's going back to college. And Mendoza, you know, he outplayed him for sure, you know, in that game. So, you know, one of the things I was saying was I was going to watch that the game closely and kind of see, you know, how those two guys kind of compete against each other. That Indiana defense is tough, and they gave Dante a lot of problems. They gave him a lot of problems. Indiana outcoached Oregon, and they just outplayed him. And Mendoza, he played a great game. He made some nice throws. He made a couple NFL type throws. I was pretty impressed. You know, he definitely played better than what I was expecting. So I will say he looked good, but does it really change, you know, how I feel as far as, you know, wanting to draft him number 1 overall? Because me personally, I want to play the long game, you know. So do I think he's a guy that, you know, if it was any other draft, you know, would he be my first pick? No. Specifically this draft, since this is the draft that we have the number 1 pick, should we get him? I mean, I understand why everyone's, you know, in love with him. I understand why people want to get him number 1. I'm still team trade back. And that's just how I'm going to be, because, again, I'm playing the long ball or the long game. So, but what he brings to the table is important for the NFL. You know, he's smart, cerebral. He's a guy that's going to put the work in. But it's just some about him I just don't know, especially for the talent that we have now. Like, are we going to have enough? Are we going to be able to do enough to help him be successful?
Right.
You know, are we going to be able to get top, you know, free agents that want to come play for us? Yeah, people always talk about how much money we have. Yes, we do have, you know, I think the 3rd most cap, you know, to be able to spend. So that's amazing. But the thing is, we're going to have to overpay a lot of guys in free agency for them to want to come to us, because guys are either going to want a big bag or they're going to play for a contender. We're nowhere near being a contender. So if we're going to get some of this top talent, it's going to have to be guys that we're going to have to outbid for them to come to us. So that money's going to be used up very quickly.
Very quickly.
I just, you know, again, I'd rather try to get more protection, get more weapons, and then get a quarterback later, you know, in another year or so. But again, I understand why people want to get him number 1 overall, since we are, you know, in the position to get any quarterback we want.
Yeah, no, I agree. Is definitely, you know, I am liking him more and more after watching him play every game.
He could throw
the
ball.
And now, next week in the championship game, you know, that that to me is going to show me, because that's it. That's like the big game for college. So, it's going to show us his leadership capabilities. But then on the other side of the coin, his success isn't just based on him as a quarterback.
Absolutely.
It's his offensive line, it's his weapons, it's the coaching. So there's a lot of pieces that are making him succeed.
Yeah.
So it's not just him as the quarterback. And you translate that over to the Raiders, and we have maybe one, probably two of the pieces required for him to succeed.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest one being the offensive line, could have been bad coaching by Carroll's kid. I really can't say much about that as far as our offensive line this year. But if we were to put Mendoza behind them, I think he would have the same results as Geno Smith. So I agree with you. I think we definitely should, trade back, start picking up a lot more draft pieces. That way we can get more players. Next year, from my understanding, it's going to be a bigger quarterback draft, correct? I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. Yeah, probably,
probably more. Yeah.
If we're really interested in getting, our quarterback of the future, then we drop draft picks, we drop money, we drop whatever we need to do in order to get that quarterback. But just relying everything on one individual, that promising quarterback this season, I don't know, man. I just don't feel it.
Yeah, like he doesn't give me that, like that Andrew Luck feel, like when he came out, or even the Joe Burrow, where or the Peyton Manning, the guys like that, where you just knew like, oh, he's going to be a franchise altering guy. He doesn't give me that feel. But again, the kid can play. The kid can play. Again, I just look at just the long game of it. And if Spy Tech can surprise me and knock this free agency out of the park, knock the draft out of the park, then he'll have a shot. But I really think it's going to definitely take some years to give this kid what he needs to be successful. As long as Raider Nation's ready to be patient, then let's get Mendoza and build around him, because we definitely have to do that. But again, if we don't make other decisions, like trade Max and get other draft capital, it's going to be tough. Because everybody talks about, hey, look at what the Bears did with Caleb Williams. But before Caleb Williams got there, they had the first overall pick, and they traded back and got him some protection and was able to get him weapons right away. So it's just a different situation. So
it's been work in progress.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Work in progress. One definite positive I see from Mendoza coming to the Raiders, and mind you, this has nothing to do with football, nothing to do with stats or anything of that sort. But if you look back at Raider history of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks for our team, who have they been? First quarterback was who?
It's your boy, man. It's your boy.
Who's that? Yep. We got a lot of good. Well, the first one was a Stabler.
Oh, Stabler first. Yeah, and then
he doesn't count, but Plunkett. Yeah, he won 2 with us. But his offensive line, who was there?
Yeah, the Dogs.
We had a line. Even though he was already basically a washed up quarterback. He
had the arch shells. Yeah. Yep.
Right. But what made him succeed?
Exactly.
That offensive line.
Exactly. They were dogs. They were dogs up front.
Yeah. So I think if Mendoza has that, if, like you mentioned, Spytek can make those fill those positions through the draft and through free agency, and give him that opportunity to learn the game at the NFL level, I think he will definitely succeed. Yeah. But the way it stands now, if he was just it was like a plug and play situation, I don't think it would be the right choice. And
it's going to,
we would be dead in the water yet another season.
Yeah, it just depends on how high you grade him. Like if you think he's going to be, like the Peyton Manning or, just a top tier quarterback, once he gets the weapons, and yeah, you can go for it. But, to me, I don't see it. But if we draft him, I hope that's the case. But like you said, even, not even have to go back and plunk it. Think about like Derek Carr's best years. That's back when Gruden invested in the line. He made sure, that he could be, and then even think about last time we went to the Super Bowl, even with Rich Gannon. There was some big boy, that's when you had Lincoln, up there, and you had Barrett Robbins kind of had his situation, but Barrett Robbins was a Pro Bowl. I think he was even all pro. He was a beast at center. Like we had some guys up front, man. It's like I want to get back to that. I want to build those trenches, so then when we do have our quarterback of the future, we can protect them, and we can get the most out of Genty, our running back for last year's, or this year. So
yeah, one last point I wanted to make on Fernando Mendoza. I had seen the Carr Brothers podcast. I don't know if you checked it out.
I did.
How they were mentioning that, just like what we're talking about now, that the best thing to do is to trade back, even though the NFL wants that shiny new quarterback, but the best thing for the Raiders is to trade back. And I've seen a lot of negative responses on that.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me that mindset of why a lot of people believe that having the number one draft pick as a quarterback is going to be the life-saving choice for our organization?
Well, I think it's one of those, it's like FOMO, the fear of missing out. We don't want to be in a position where it's like, man, we miss this guy. Because the thing is, every year we always see these other teams get a quarterback, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we haven't picked the quarterback in the first round since Jamarcus Russell. And a lot of us are like, we always think about that. But then there's a lot of the fan base is like, man, we could have got our guy. We could have had this guy, and they go through all that. So it's like, I think they're just at the point where it's like, it's finally our turn. It's finally our turn. But my thing is, it's like, man, yes, it's finally our turn, but why does it have to be this draft class? Like, how come it couldn't have been that class when, Jaden Daniels came out, or Caleb? Yeah, like, gosh, why, and honestly, I think next year's class is going to be, very well, very good as well. So, but yeah, I just think our fan base is just, we need something to be excited about. You know how down me and you've been, fans for a very long time, and these were some of the darkest days we've had, this past season. I mean, there was times I usually go to, quite a few games, from Ohio, still going to quite a few games. But this is the first year I was just like, man, I'm gonna find something else to do. I'm not spending my money going out to Vegas or Oakland or traveling. I'm doing something else, because I was just so down in the dumps about everything. So this is gonna be something that's gonna uplift us, but we just gotta have to manage our expectations and make them realistic.
Yes, sir. Well, Raider Nation, you tell us what you think as far as the coaching carousel, who you think our next coach should be, and also what are your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza, on him being the number one draft pick? Do you think we should take him? Do you think we should trade back, get some more draft picks? Let us know. You already heard what we think. If you don't agree with us, let us know why you don't agree. That's what it's all about. Yep. It's about conversation. Hit the comments. So, Raider Nation, let's see with what's going on with Chris. Chris, what you got going for us, brother?
Same thing, man, as always, man. Just rocking out with my boys on the Raider War Room, man. We definitely starting to get it going again, really starting to break down the prospects and candidates for, the head coach, and just getting ready to get into our off-season mode that, really that's kind of when we really took off last year, during the off-season, giving the fans a lot of detailed information, having fun doing it as well. So, every Sunday we do that, and every Wednesday we do that. So, definitely make sure you guys check me out. Protect the Show podcast on all platforms. That's what we do, man. Just having fun and trying to bring Raider Nation the best content possible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Chris, Protect the Show podcast.
Sir.
War Room, 805 Raider, the Severe Raider. They put some fire content out there. And as you know, Raider Nation, we're here with you on a weekly basis Raider Nation's Weekly Wire. We also have Raider Nation Roll Call. There's actually an episode that dropped actually today, Friday,
Nice.
but you're going to watch this on Saturday. So check that out. It's going to be about the last game of the season against KC. TNBC, the Nation Booster Club, had a big tailgate, had some parties going on.
Fire.
It was a lot of fun.
Fire.
It was a lot of fun. So check it out. It dropped Friday. What else? Oh, Stogie Nation coming up. I'm working again, getting something going with Violator. Going to do some lounge reviews, cigar reviews. So
Nice.
that'll be coming up in the near future. So again, Raider Nation, thanks for joining us this week. Remember, like, subscribe, follow, Chris Protect the Shield, Dub Raider on all platforms. And again, Raider Nation, remember, everything we do is for the nation, by the nation. Peace.
Raider, let's go.